Welcome to the Mac's Future Weekly Podcast. All Apple talk and no chit-chat.
Okay, welcome to the Apple Podcast, and this is Lex at the MacRumors.com blog. And today is September 30th, 2011, Friday. And this is episode 91 of the Apple Podcast, discussing all sorts of things that relate to Apple, Apple news, Apple products, Apple events, Apple everything. And this is a chit-chat-free podcast. And let's get to it. Okay, so the big news is that earlier this week, I think it was on Tuesday, Apple sent out invitations to various journalists, inviting them to an on-Apple campus event to discuss the iPhone. And the invitation was the clue as to what it's about. Obviously, and then the date is October 4th, Tuesday. So this coming Tuesday, just 4 days away from now, Apple will unveil its next iPhone. And there is a clue. Some people started reading tea leaves. If you look at the video version of this podcast, Apple likes to put clues in the invitation. Here, the invitation, I'll describe it to you, is just the sentence, "Let's talk iPhone," with 4 app icons. One icon just says Tuesday the 4th, which is the date. The other icon is a clock, and it says 10 o'clock, which is 10 o'clock Pacific time. And another one is the map, and has the location of Infinite Loop in Cupertino, California, off of Highway 280. And then the other icon is the phone icon, just with like the one message indicator. So some people think that this means that there's only going to be one iPhone model. In other words, yeah, it'll come in different sizes. But remember, there had been speculation for months that Apple's going to have an iPhone 5, which is going to be a completely redesigned body for the iPhone, different than the iPhone 4, and then maybe have an iPhone 4S. Remember, back after the iPhone 3G came out, Apple created the next year a model called the 3GS, which looked just like the 3G, but had more power. So some people are saying this is a sign from Apple that there's not going to be more than one model. The other thing is that the clue is that it says "Let's talk iPhone," and some people think that's an indication of there's going to be huge voice recognition technology in iOS 5. And for weeks there's been clues that there's going to be additional features of iOS 5 that haven't been in a developer's build so far. So we'll have to see what happens. Okay, so there have been competing rumors as to what exactly is going to happen on October 4th. One set of rumors, and it keeps going back and forth, say that there's only going to be what's known as an iPhone 4S. In other words, an iPhone that has the exact same shape and feel of the current iPhone, but with better features, like like a better processor, a better camera, that sort of thing, plus iOS 5. Now, MacRumors.com on Friday, September 30th, ran this story entitled "iPhone 4S, quotes, N94, end quote, to come in 16 gigabyte, 32 gigabyte, and 64 gigabyte size." And it cites 9to5Mac and says that this iPhone is called the N94, and it's a next generation iPhone, is being stocked by Apple in 3 different capacities. Currently, the iPhone 4 only comes in 16 gigabytes and 32 gigabytes, and they're saying the iPhone 4 will go to 4S will go to 64 gigabytes. And basically, there is a model that is circulating that has the iPhone 4 design with 64 gigabytes of storage. And now, there is something to be said to Apple not changing the current form of the iPhone and just coming up with a better version of the iPhone with a faster processor, a better camera, and other features like a better operating system or more storage. Because the iPhone 4 has been the best-selling iPhone so far, and despite, the antenna gate thing, which last year people were saying there's problems with the antenna, the way you hold it, it's really a great design. It's it's just beautiful, the iPhone 4. And I think there's another reason why Apple shouldn't change it, because I think if you change the form every year, it does cause problems. For example, the iPhone 4 was obviously a different design than the iPhone 3G and 3GS, which were exactly the same in design. And that resulted in you couldn't use any of the cases from the iPhone 3G and the 3GS on the iPhone 4. You had to get new cases. Well, when the iPhone 4 came out, remember, there were hardly any cases at all. And Apple offered the bumper to try to, solve the problem with the antenna issue. But there weren't a lot of cases. And now there's a lot of great cases for the iPhone 4. Now, why should Apple care? Why should Apple care? And here's why. Because if Apple changes the design, there's not going to be a lot of cases. And actually having a great number of third-party cases is a selling point to the phone. For example, the fact that I know that there is a great number of cases for the iPhone, for some customers, it may make it more likely that they buy an iPhone than an Android device. Android devices come in all sorts of shapes. And a lot of people like having the choice of cases. And by having a consistent design in the iPhone, you then have just a wide variety of cases. Now think about it this way. Like, one of the reasons that Apple lost the PC battle with Microsoft is, while the Macintosh operating system was better, they were the only hardware manufacturer. There weren't a lot of software items that worked with the Mac. And so you didn't really have a lot of choices of software. While the PC and running Windows, there was just a wide variety of third-party software. And to some extent, the cases are like that. I'm not going to have more than one cases, but there's a lot of young people or women who like choices and like designing and decorating their iPhone. And I see, people with just really clever and beautiful cases on their iPhone that make the iPhone look different than every other iPhone just because the cases are so nice. And so Apple sells a lot of cases. There's a big market for these cases. Now, on the other hand, if you have a new design of the iPhone, it will cause you to buy a new case. And so it could also create more case sales in that way. So I don't know. I do think that it's very possible that there is no change. And also, just from a business development perspective, if Apple has the factories already geared up to make the iPhone 4 and all they're doing is adding some components in and fitting it in the same design, it might be easier to crank out massive amounts of iPhone 4S's than a completely redesigned iPhone. But there's still indications that there may be a redesigned iPhone, so let's get to that story. Okay, but there had been stories also that there's going to be an iPhone 5 coming out that has a completely different design. And MacRumors had a story entitled iPhone 5 Silicone Sleeves Already Arriving at AT&T Retail Stores. And on Thursday, September 29th, this is what the MacRumors site said. It said, earlier today, we noted that casemate cases for the redesigned iPhone 5 had appeared in AT&T's inventory database. The addition yielded the interesting observation that AT&T is apparently placing orders for the cases despite the growing feeling that Apple may not be releasing such a device and instead releasing only the iPhone 4S design that is nearly identical to the iPhone 4. And basically, they show these cases that I guess come from AT&T retail stores that have tapered cases. So because the rumors had been that the iPhone redesign is going to be tapered so that it's thinner on one end and thicker on the other end, so that it feels thinner, sort of like the MacBook Air or the I guess I don't know, is the iPod tapered? No, the iPod is not tapered. So, excuse me, I don't know what this means. It could be that AT&T is just guessing, and some of its suppliers are guessing that there's going to be a tapered phone. On the other hand, maybe Apple is releasing a tapered phone. Now, I was listening to the talk show podcast by John Gruber and Dan Benjamin, and John Gruber made an interesting point. He said, right now, the iPhone 4 is beautifully symmetrical, right? I mean, it's the exact same thickness on one end as the other end, and he says that's kind of important because, with the iPhone, like the iPad, you don't just hold it in one direction. Often you go to landscape mode, and in landscape mode, you hold it horizontally. And if it's tapered and thinner on one end, isn't that going to be kind of awkward? And so I was thinking about that. Would it really be that awkward to, to have an iPhone that's thinner in one end? And I don't know. I don't know if it really would make a difference. I'm sort of holding the iPhone. If it's just a gradual thinness, maybe it doesn't make a difference. Maybe just having that thinner feeling altogether is worth it. So, it's very possible. This would be wild if Apple comes out with two versions of the iPhone 4S and the iPhone 5. Now, why would Apple do that? Now, maybe Apple's just going to have a low-end iPhone, and this was the original rumor, and a low-end iPhone that's the iPhone 4S that has only 8 gigabytes of storage and maybe a faster processor, but the camera is the same as the current camera on the iPhone, a 5 megapixel. And then and that's going to be maybe the low, cheap iPhone, which is actually, maybe Apple's going to do something revolutionary, which is have an iPhone with just a cell data plan and a month-to-month phone service if you want it. So that would be kind of cool. So maybe you could just sign up to get monthly data like the iPad on a 3G. And then if you want phone service, just pay on a month-to-month basis without any contract. And maybe Apple can sell that phone without a contract commitment for, let's say, $300. I think a lot of people would buy it for $300. Yeah, if you could just have sort of an ad hoc data plan and pay for the phone service when you would want it. So that would be kind of something exciting if Apple did that. I would like to see something radical like that. And then maybe the iPhone 5 with the new design, maybe that will be the traditionally subsidized, U.S. plans where you pay $200. Let's say you pay $200 for a 32 gigabyte iPhone 5 and $300 for a 64 gigabyte iPhone 5. That would make the iPhone 5 really compelling because right now the $300 with a subsidy from AT&T or Verizon iPhone costs $300 when you buy it. And you're locked into a 2-year plan. So that would be really cool. I think that would really blow people away if you could get the 64 gigabyte iPhone 5 with, for $300. Now, it's supposed to have, all the rumors say it's going to have an 8 megapixel camera, but it's not going to sacrifice low light photo taking. So it's supposed to be better in low light, and it's going to have the A5 processor, the dual core processor that's in the iPad 2. So it's just going to be a lot faster. We'll see. It's right now it has the A4 chip. So we'll see on Tuesday. It's going to be 1 o'clock Eastern time. And I'm kind of excited to see what it's going to be like. Now, 9to5mac.com had an interesting article on September 26, in which that website claims to know of a certain feature that's going to be in iOS 5 that's going to be released probably shortly after the announcement on October 4th. And it's going to be a feature of iOS 5 that 9to5Mac says it's only going to be in the new iPhone. And the way they described it is that, they said it's pretty revolutionary. And I wrote about this. And basically, what 9to5Mac revealed is that the final build of iOS 5 will probably be revealed on October 4th or so, when Apple has its big fall event. And that one feature, which has not appeared so far in the developer builds, is something that 9to5mac.com appears to have found out about from its sources. It's called Assistant, and it appears to be a voice recognition built into iOS 5. It also apparently is based on the Siri technology that Apple purchased previously and from Nuance. And here's what 9to5Mac says. This is what 9to5Mac says. It says, from what we've heard, the Siri-Based Assistant is described as the biggest game changer in this year's iPhone. The system is the evolution of the voice control function that was introduced alongside the iPhone 3GS in 2009, and it is the fruit of Apple's purchase of Siri last year. How it works. This is, again, according to 9to5Mac. It says, to activate, the user holds down the home button for a couple of seconds, loads much quicker than the voice control because of the A5 chip and the RAM, and then the microphone interface slides up from the bottom in a clever animation. The speech interface doesn't cover your entire view, just about the bottom fourth of the display, like the multitasking app switcher function. The feature even works from the lock screen. Now, one thing I should note is that 9to5Mac and others have said that the new iPhone will have 1 gigabyte worth of RAM storage. The current one has 512. Just like on a computer, RAM is important for if you want to load a lot of apps at the same time. And it could be this Siri voice recognition that's built into the operating system needs to take up more RAM. So this is what I said. I said, this technology sounds like a game changer. Very good voice recognition is the next frontier for computing. The iOS devices pioneered the transition to touch computing. Before that, Apple pioneered the transition to Windows-based and mouse computing. The next paradigm for computing will be voice recognition, and by that I mean true voice recognition, where you can speak naturally and the computer recognizes your commands. Now that is something really hard to do. 9to5Mac's description of the assistant in iOS 5 sounds truly amazing. Here is something I don't think anyone else has implemented. And then I quote from 9to5Mac. It says, one of the key elements of assistance is the conversation view. This is what 9to5Mac is saying. The system will actually speak back and forth with the user to gain the most information in order to provide the best results. The user essentially can hold a conversation with their iPhone like it is another human being. For example, if a user is making a meeting with me, they will say, quote, set up meeting with Mark, end quote, and the first, quote, bubble, end quote, of the conversation thread will say that. After that, the system will speak back, quote, which email address should Mark be notified at, work or personal, end quote. This question will both be spoken out loud by the iPhone assistant and shown as a new bubble in the conversation thread. The user will then respond with the email address they want to notify me at, and the appointment will be made. The iPhone will even show a quick glance at a calendar view to confirm the appointment. If the assistant was sending an SMS or another example, a mini SMS view would appear so the user has a quick glance at the SMS thread. Again, this is from the 9to5mac.com website. So apparently, Assistant is also integrated with the Wolfram Alpha service, according to the article, which allows you to do complex calculations by voice input and complex research. I have to say, all of the features in iOS 5 and the next iPhone, this Assistant feature is something I'm really looking forward to. I think this is going to be huge. So we have many things to look forward to on October 4th. Now, there may be another great new feature in the iPhone 5, particularly in the ones that run on AT&T services. And 9to5Mac.com had an article out on Thursday, September 29th, entitled iPhone 5 to support 21 megabits per second HSPA plus, quote, 4G, end quote, technology. And it goes on to say that they noticed that there was a Japanese blog called Makotakara, and it reported via Mac Post that a China Unicom executive apparently confirmed during a presentation at this week's Macworld Asia that, quote, the iPhone 5, end quote, set to be announced next week, will indeed support HSPA plus, sometimes called 4G technology, offering them a maximum theoretical data speed of 21 megabits per second, up from 7.2 megabits per second. So now what this is, it's not the true fourth generation cell phone data connection known as LTE. That's something that Verizon has rolled out, and AT&T is starting to roll out in some cities. And what this is a bridge to true 4G. But the bottom line is it could end up really speeding your data connection through AT&T. Right now I have AT&T, and I'm getting, when I have a great connection, I'm getting speeds of over, like, I don't know, 5 megabits per second downloading and maybe a little over 1 megabits per second uploading. And HSPA plus is a technology in the cell phone towers, I guess, or cell phone service that AT&T has, and maybe some other, that can have faster speeds up to 21 megabits per second. Like, again, the 4G technology theoretically can go up to 100 megabits per second. Now, this is really fast stuff, because if you think about it, if you have a cable connection for the internet, you know, you've got blazing speeds if you can get 20 megabits per second or 30 megabits per second downloading. So if I can get 21 megabits per second or even 10 megabits per second consistently downloading on my iPhone, I'm going to be really happy. You know, a lot of people don't know this, but actually AT&T compared to Verizon has faster upload speeds than Verizon on 3G. So I'm getting upload speeds of like 1.5 megabits per second on the iPhone on AT&T. And what's interesting is it's actually a faster upload speed than my Time Warner connection on my cable, which consistently has me under 1 megabits per second. So this is good news. The other thing is, there's some indication it may have a chip in the iPhone that can run both on GSP, GP. Wait, what is it? Well, it's on AT&T's technology, but also on CDMA, which is Verizon's technology. So that would be cool, that it would be a universal chip. That would be also something profound. So then you could basically take your iPhone, if you were no longer on the AT&T contract, and go to Verizon and vice versa. It would also make it easier for Verizon customers to go overseas with their iPhone and hook on to a GSM network. That's the term. That's predominant in, like, let's say Europe. So a dual cell phone chip, that would be very cool if they announced that on October 4th. But October 4th could also be a sad day, because it may be that Apple discontinues the classic iPod, you know, the one with the click wheel, the one with 160 gigabytes worth of storage. Well, there is some talk and some rumors that Apple is no longer going to have a traditional iPod Classic. Maybe they'll have the Nano using the flash storage, but the days of the click wheel may be gone. And here's what, there's a story sort of confirming that from AppleInsider on let's see, when was it? Well, today, September 30th. The story says Apple removes click wheel games from iTunes as iPod Classic lives its last days. And the article basically says there are certain games in iTunes that only work on the old-fashioned iPod with the click wheel. And it says here in the story, as Apple is rumored to discontinue its aging hard drive-based iPod Classic, the company has removed a section from the iTunes store devoted to click wheel games. And it says here, users used to be able to access a link to iPod click wheel games by clicking a drop-down menu on the iPod store link in iTunes. But now that option has disappeared from the menu. And so there's a plan, it sounds like, to discontinue the iPod Classic. And it's kind of ironic because it's 10 years ago in October of 2001 that the original iPod was released. And the thing is, though, iPod sales have been going down steadily because iPod Touch and iPhone sales have been sort of cannibalizing the iPod. Really, why do you need the iPod if you have the iPod Touch or the iPhone? The only reason I think some people still like the iPod Classic is that it has massive storage. But with iTunes Match going to the cloud, there's less need for onboard storage. You can store all your stuff in the cloud and be able to download it. So that's a little sad. I have a collection of iPods. They're really kind of beautiful and classic, and it's sad to see them go. Okay, in terms of competitors to Apple, on Wednesday of this week, Amazon in some ways became even more of a competitor with Apple. Amazon had a big announcement. In some ways, you think the timing of the announcement this week, Wednesday, right before Apple's October 4th announcement, was an effort by Amazon to sort of, undercut Apple and take away some of Apple's thunder. And so the big announcement by Amazon was that it's announced new Kindles are going to be available, starting in price from $79, the basic Kindle. This one with no keyboard, just but e-ink, and with advertising just costing $79. And the high end, they're going to have a Kindle that's really running on some form of Android and is a color device and can play movies and other content, and it's going to cost only $200. And in between, they're going to have a touch Kindle, an ebook reader Kindle that sells for $99, and one with unlimited 3G access at $149. Now, what was interesting about the announcement is that Jeff Bezos, the CEO and founder of Amazon, he, introduced these Kindles and the Kindle Fire. That's what the $200 Android-based Kindle is going to be called. And what's interesting, I watched, you can go on YouTube, and I have a link to it. It's a 51-minute introduction. And, some people say he's trying to channel Steve Jobs, with the slideshow and walking around. But there's something very different. It's kind of creepy almost. I mean, he's bald. He's got this weird bald head, and he's not as charismatic in any way like Steve Jobs. And so it seemed kind of odd. The other thing is, when Steve Jobs does these announcements, it's weird. When Steve Jobs does an announcement, or Apple, there's like cheering, and people are excited in the audience. And I'm not sure who was in this audience. I think it was journalists, maybe in New York City. And they barely cheered anything, even though there was some interesting announcements like the Fire. It was kind of awkward. Bezos would sort of try to make a big point, like, isn't this great, like this technology we have? For example, with the Kindle Fire, you'll have now the ability to watch videos on it and use the Whisper Sync technology, which works with ebooks, where if you read an ebook on one Kindle app, let's say on the Kindle, and then pick up reading the book on another app, it knows exactly where you are, and it coordinates it. And so with Whisper Sync for video, if you're watching a video on the Kindle Fire, and then you're watching a video using Amazon's video service on, let's say, a TV that has the Amazon video service, it's supposed to sync your spot so you can pick it up there. This is similar. I guess Apple has this technology too. But the weird thing was there was no excitement. There was no cheering. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's just a different culture. Maybe they told the journalists not to cheer or disrupt. But I found it to be oddly un-Apple-like in terms of atmosphere and presentation. So I don't know, Mr. Bezos, you should maybe try a different way to do these presentations. So what does this all mean? What does this mean with Amazon? What does this mean to Apple and to others? Well, I wrote a pretty lengthy post yesterday, and here's what I said. And here's the title. The title is, "With the Kindle Fire and Silk browser, Amazon dropped a competitive bomb on Apple, Google, Microsoft, Samsung, HTC, Facebook, and Netflix." And this is what I said. "Yesterday, Jeff Bezos of Amazon unveiled its new Kindle lineup consisting of an entry-level Kindle at $79, a Kindle Touch at $99, a Kindle Touch 3G at $149, and a Kindle Fire at $199. These prices, except for the Fire, are based on the user accepting advertising. Otherwise, they are a little more expensive if you purchase the model with no advertising. Amazon is seeking to disrupt a number of big players in the computer and internet world, the most notable being Apple, Google, Microsoft, Samsung, HTC, Facebook, and Netflix. So here's as to Apple. I call it Amazon takes on the iPad. The Kindle Fire is a competitive assault on Apple, as this 7-inch tablet could compete with Apple's iPad and take away iPad customers. Here are the pros as to how Amazon could take away iPad customers from Apple. The Kindle Fire is $300 cheaper than the cheapest iPad. The Kindle Fire runs on Android and allows Android apps to run on it, as well as allowing users to surf the web with a browser called Silk. The Kindle Fire is smaller and thus lighter than the iPad, so it may be attractive to users who find the iPad to be too heavy. The Kindle Fire is tied to the Amazon Prime free movie service, so you can sign up for Amazon Prime at $79 per year, and it ties in with Google's music services. Here are the cons in the Kindle Fire's ability to compete with the iPad. The Kindle Fire's screen is only 45% the size of the iPad screen. Users who are seeking to use the iPad as a computing device to replace a regular computer will probably purchase the larger iPad over the Kindle Fire. The Kindle Fire has only 8 gigabytes of onboard storage compared to the minimum 16 gigabytes on the entry-level iPad. The Kindle Fire has no 3G model. There are many more iPad apps than Android apps for tablet devices. The iPad is tied and compatible with a wide hardware ecosystem consisting of iPad, iPhone, iPod Touch, Macintoshes, and Apple TV. The Kindle is not tied to any other hardware ecosystem. The iPad is tied to the iTunes Store, which for digital media, whether music or videos, is still more dominant than Amazon's digital store. Then I go on to say the regular Kindle and the Touch Kindles that Amazon has also just released aren't really a competitive threat to Apple. These Kindles only replicate a small section of the iPad's functionality, the ability to read books and articles. These Kindles at best supplement the iPad. Most people don't purchase the iPad just to read books. Rather, most people purchase the iPad to get a wide range of experiences, including to play great games, surf the internet, and use all sorts of other apps. The iPad could replace a computer for many people. Bottom line, the Kindle and Touch Kindle could not replace a computer for most people. But the Kindle Fire has implications for others, not just Apple. And here's what I say about Google, how Amazon screwed it over. Amazon's recent release of the Kindle Fire is in some way a big FU to Google. The Kindle Fire runs on Android, but Amazon has stripped it from being in any way an open source Android OS or in any way an Android OS that is beholden to Google. It is a Frankenstein version of Android, made to look like something unique from Amazon, and in no way a generic Google-like OS. Amazon has essentially shut out Google from the Kindle Fire by integrating the Fire with Amazon services for apps, music, and videos. That is, the only apps it appears you can get on the Fire are from Amazon's Android store. But the most disturbing thing for Google is that Amazon has installed its own browser on the Kindle Fire called Silk. This Silk browser is a direct assault on Google's domination of the web. Silk is not a regular browser. In the name of speeding up the browsing experience, Amazon has made Silk to run half on the Kindle Fire and half on Amazon's cloud computing servers. From Amazon's description, it sounds like all web content that you try to find and read on Silk goes first to Amazon's cloud computing servers, where the internet content is, quote, optimized, end quote, for the Silk browser. Apparently, Amazon boosts the speed on Silk by, among other things, seeing your pattern of usage on sites and the pattern of usage of others and caching what it thinks you will look at. In the presentation by Jeff Bezos, he explained that Amazon can tell that users who go to the New York Times website often then click on the business section. So Amazon will anticipate what part of a website you are going to and cache the relevant section. Essentially, Amazon will be tracking your web use through Silk and optimize your experience. This could mean that Amazon also starts selling ads or recommends products from its stores to you through your browsing. While initially the search engine for you to use in Silk will be Google, Amazon could easily replace Google, and it looks like Google won't have access to all of Amazon's data on Silk users' search and web use. So Google has to think long and hard if its effort to give away Android for free and make it open in the end will come back to bite Google. Instead of making an alliance with other large companies, Google has given companies like Amazon a weapon to attack Google itself. Google should seriously consider ending its open Android experiment. Google should seriously consider that and should make future versions of Android proprietary and build its own devices through its Motorola acquisition if it goes through. But Google's not the only one threatened by the Kindle Fire. Samsung and HTC, they just got clobbered in the low-end tablet space. Samsung and HTC, two of the largest hardware manufacturers of Android devices, are severely harmed by Amazon's Kindle Fire release. So far, no Android device has been able to compete in Apple's iPad space. One area where Android tablets had promise was in the sub-iPad space, i.e. tablets smaller than 9 to 10 inches in diameter and substantially cheaper than the iPad's $500 entry price. Amazon has now taken a big lead in that space with the Kindle Fire. At $200, it will be very hard for Samsung and HTC to match or beat that price and still have any profit. More significantly, Amazon has an ecosystem of content with ebooks, music, videos, apps, and games that are tied to the Kindle Fire and help support the cost of the product. Samsung and HTC are not in the content business. Now the two dominant tablet manufacturers, Apple in the 9 to 10 inch tablet space and Amazon in the sub 7 inch space, both have content tied to the hardware. How about Microsoft? Well, that old giant faces another challenger. Microsoft is also harmed by Amazon's Kindle Fire. Microsoft has already been extremely late to enter the tablet space, having only announced Windows 8 recently and not expected to ship any Windows 8 tablets until next year. Microsoft was already seeing itself as third place to Apple's iOS and Google's Android. Now Microsoft is seeing itself as fourth place, as the Kindle Fire is really its own operating system in the ecosystem. That is, while nominally Android, the OS on the Kindle Fire is really the Silk browser, which is Amazon's concoction. So Microsoft sees a new competitor. Microsoft not only has Apple and Google to contend with, but also Amazon. Believe me, they are not celebrating the release of the Kindle Fire in Redmond, Washington. How about Netflix? Amazon Prime is a direct threat. Netflix, which is trying to become a streaming video company, is directly threatened by Amazon's launch of the Kindle Fire. Amazon has already been competing with Netflix by offering free video streaming to anyone who signs up for the $79 per year Amazon Prime service. Now Amazon is giving Kindle Fire purchasers a free 30-day trial to Amazon Prime, and the Kindle Fire is optimized to run Amazon movies and videos. Significantly, Amazon revealed that its movies and videos will work with WhisperSync, which is Amazon's syncing service for ebooks. This means if you watch a movie on the Kindle Fire and stop it in midstream, you can pick up watching the movie at the same spot on any other device that runs Amazon Video. Many TVs and set-top boxes run Amazon Video as well as Netflix, but Amazon is undercutting Netflix cost, which is closer to $100 per year. For $79, Amazon gives you free 2-day shipping on all purchases, as well as free movies and shipping. Granted, Amazon's movie and video library is much smaller than Netflix's library, but as Amazon expands its movie and video library, Netflix sees its business disappearing. Now, Facebook, one closed network sees another closed network emerge. Finally, Facebook is also threatened by Amazon's Kindle Fire announcement. With the Kindle Fire and Silk browser, Amazon is creating a closed network where it can sell services and products to customers and track their web interests and needs. Amazon is now a closed consuming experience, which could rival Facebook's closed social service. Facebook could only feel more threatened by Amazon if Amazon created a social network like FB or Google+. At this rate, with Amazon having revealed the Kindle Fire and released its music cloud service, I wouldn't be surprised if Amazon created or purchased its own social network. Now, one website that I read a lot is Asymco, ASYMCO.com, which is run by a guy named Horace Dediu, D-E-D-I-U, who was an executive at Nokia, and he went to Tufts undergraduate and Harvard Business School. And he's done a lot of analysis on businesses and Apple. And he has an interesting article out on September 30th, which is entitled "The Case Against Kindle as a Low-End Tablet Disruption." And I guess the point he makes is that there's some information out now that the Kindle Fire is going to be losing $50 a device. That the reason it's so cheap is that Amazon is selling it below its cost, and that Amazon hopes to make its money through providing services, digital services. And what Horace Dediu sort of points out is that providing sort of a low-end hardware and hoping to make your money on the service is not going to be very disruptive. That it's hard to provide international services. And he points out, to say, look, Apple's only bringing iTunes to certain countries overseas only now. In other words, that it's very hard to provide services around the world because there are all sorts of regulatory paths. And also, if you are not really earning any sort of premium in the hardware, you're not going to really invest in upgrading it and having it improve. And I kind of agree with him. I'm sort of summarizing what he said. And I commented on his website. Let's see if my comment is there. What did I say? Let's see. Oh, here we go. I wrote, "I agree with you, Horace. Note, Amazon is supposedly losing $50 per Kindle Fire, and historically Amazon, despite high revenues, has very low and minuscule profit margins. Bezos even acknowledged in the Kindle Fire presentation that Amazon is not shy about having low profit margins. Amazon is counting on getting profits from its services like ebooks, videos, and apps, but it is doubtful that Amazon will ever get serious profits from those services. Digitalization is necessarily necessarily results on lower prices and smaller profit margins. That is why Apple's model is not to rely on profits from digital content, but instead to rely on profits from high-end innovating hardware. Amazon is not only doomed not to be able to meaningfully upgrade the Kindle Fire, but in the end of the day, I predict Amazon will collapse. Endlessly growing revenue without building substantial profit margins is a doomed business model. Amazon is very vulnerable when its profit margins are so low. If Amazon loses the tax collecting advantage that it has enjoyed against land-based stores, Amazon's revenue and profits could take a hit. Look at how Dell and HP are floundering in the generic PC market. HP is leaving the business. Amazon came out with the original Kindle, yet let Barnes & Noble leapfrog it with better hardware in the recent Color and Touch Nook. Amazon is essentially playing catch-up with the Nook. Apple would never allow a competitor to leapfrog its devices in quality. Amazon allowed the Nook to surpass the Kindle in quality because, as Horace pointed out, Amazon's business model relies on the service, not the hardware being profitable. Also, as other commenters pointed out, the Kindle Fire lacks a lot of the features that made the Kindle popular. It doesn't have free 3G data access or any 3G. It doesn't have a long battery life. It isn't super light, and it doesn't have an e-ink screen that you can see clearly in direct sunlight. What the Fire has is a low price compared to the iPad. But the service Amazon adds to the strength of its ebook library are not strong themselves. So yes, Amazon Prime offers free movies and videos for $79 per year, as well as free 2-day shipping, but Amazon's movie library is puny and nothing compared to Netflix or other services. If Amazon doesn't maintain its closed platform on the Kindle Fire and allows Netflix and other movie streaming apps, then Amazon kills its business model. So, I don't know. Now I'm thinking Horace is right. I don't think Amazon's going to do so well with the Kindle Fire. Okay, so Apple has vanquished one of its more weaker competitors. Remember Pystar? That was that company in Florida that essentially was taking the Mac operating system and slapping them on Intel-based processors and building Mac clones, even though Apple's license says you can't do that. Well, Apple sued them in district court in, I guess, California, and they won an injunction. And Pystar appealed to the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit, and CNET reports on the 29th that the United States Court of Appeal has sided with Apple and ruled that Pystar's Mac clones violated copyrights Apple holds, and the ban on sales will be upheld. And it says here that Pystar specifically violated the copyrights Apple holds for the Mac operating system and upheld the ruling in Apple's favor. Now, the only thing Apple lost is Apple tried to seal some court documents, and the court said, no, you have to unseal those court documents. So, you know, it was kind of a stupid business model to so blatantly, you know, clone Apple's computers and run the operating system without permission. And I'm not surprised they lost in the Court of Appeal. So it's the end of that Pystar saga. Well, a free app finally came out that I'm looking forward to. The TUAW.com website noted that Quora, which is a question and answer service, has a new Quora app for the iPhone. And here's what they say. It says, Quora, the popular question and answer social networking site, has released their first iPhone app. Quora for the iPhone allows users to ask and answer questions on the go. The iPhone app has kept the core of what makes Quora popular and easy to use. Plus, it has added some unique features. The iPhone app now offers a feature called Nearby. It's essentially location-based questions. You can browse questions based on areas from an embedded Google map with the app. So Nearby hones in on your current location, but if you want, you can jump to another city or a country and see specific questions. So I'm really looking forward to this app because, think about what you could do. You could ask, it says here in the examples, what firm is redesigning the Met's website? Are the paintings sold outside along the street of the Met legit? So in other words, you could go to the Metropolitan Museum and while there, browse the questions that relate to the Metropolitan Museum or ask your own questions. So this is very useful, for somebody visiting a city. They could see what kind of questions and pose their own questions. So I think this is great that the Quora service is now on the iPhone, and I'm going to try it out. Now, Cult of Mac has an interesting article out on September 29th entitled Apple is working on a new drive that combines hard drives and SSDs. Now, here's the thing. I recently, as many of you know, upgraded my 2010 iMac 27-inch by sending it to Otherworld Computing and having a second drive be put in, an SSD drive, a solid-state drive. And I got to tell you, it's, I think, one of the best things I've ever done because my 2010 iMac runs incredibly fast and smooth. And I think a lot of people should do that. But one issue with SSD drives is that they're expensive and you don't get a lot of storage for the price. For example, I guess Apple sells like a 256 SSD drive that you can have put into your iMac when you order it. And I think Apple charges like $500 for that upgrade. So it's pretty pricey because for $500, you could get like, I don't know, like a 4 terabyte external hard drive. So that's a big trade-off in terms of storage. But I guess Cult of Mac got this information from Patently Apple, which says that on September 29th, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office published a patent application from Apple that reveals a next-generation hybrid drive that it includes both a hard drive and flash. So in other words, they're making a drive, and we've already seen this. Seagate makes a hard drive that has a little bit of solid-state drive in it. And anyways, Patently Apple says Intel will be pushing their Smart Response hybrid drive system for consumer systems in 2012, and Apple's patent would indicate that they intend to have their own solution for future hardware. Uniquely, Apple's twist to this drive is that it will handle different types of storage media based on an environmental state of the hybrid drive. If the drive undergoes temperature, vibration, or acceleration variance that could cause the drive to temporarily fail, the system would save the volatile data to the flash drive. And then it goes on to say in the article, if the system detects a possible compromise on the hard drive part of the drive, data will be automatically relocated to the solid-state drive, kind of like how RAID technology works now, only smarter. So it goes on to say platter drives are much more susceptible to physical shocks, magnetization, and extreme temperatures, so a modern SSD would offer an added layer of assurance and speed to the whole process. So, I mean, this sounds very interesting if they can pull this off, having sort of a hybrid SSD drive and hard drive that's also smart and knows when to take advantage of the SSD. So on that topic, Otherworld Computing, OWC, or MacSales.com, the place that upgraded my 2010 iMac, had an interesting blog post on its blog today entitled When Slower is Actually Faster. And they make the point that just by getting a newer regular hard drive, you might get an increase in read-write speeds. And basically it points out that there's something known as PMR. With the advent of PMR, now I had never heard of that. And PMR is, I guess, sort of stacking the density of bits on a hard drive. It says, with the advent of PMR, the areal density of today's drives is increasing, and then head movement is faster because the distance to data points is shorter. And so basically it's saying, like, look, if you just get a newer hard drive that has perpendicular magnetic recording, or PMR, versus longitudinal recording, then you're going to get more density of data, and so that's going to make the read-write speeds faster. And so it gives some examples showing how some like newer hard drives can get speeds, and these are just, they're not SSD drives, can get faster speeds. For example, 100 megabytes per second, as opposed to an older drive that was only getting 25 megabytes per second. And maybe that's why I hooked up an old Seagate hard drive by eSATA to my new eSATA connections, and I was still only getting like 30, 40 megabytes per second. So maybe what I need to do is just get a faster external hard drive. So anyway, so if you're considering upgrading, you might want to look into a perpendicular recording external hard drive, because you may get a significant read-write boost. In other words, not if you're currently getting 30 or 40, 50 megabytes per second read-write speeds, you might get, just with a regular hard drive that has this perpendicular read-write technology, 100 megabytes per second, which isn't bad. It's pretty fast. Okay, so finally there's a story out on electronista.com just about what goes on behind the scene. When big powers like Apple, Facebook, and HP are squaring off. And apparently Steve Jobs got really livid when Facebook was going to release an app for the HP touchpad before the iPad. And apparently this caused Facebook then to, John Rubinstein of HP said, no, you had promised us a Facebook iPad app or a Facebook tablet app. And Steve Jobs was upset because, there is no Facebook iPad app. And according to this article, actually via Mashable, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg agreed to pull the app when Steve Jobs became livid from the Hewlett-Packard touchpad. But when opposed by HP's mobile head, John Rubinstein, Zuckerberg simply pulled access to the Facebook programming interfaces, rendering the app mostly ineffective. So apparently the Facebook app did end up shipping with the production model of the touchpad on July 1st. And the functionality in it appeared to be hacked-in build that was missing significant features. So according to this article, HP believes that Facebook played both sides, getting commitments to Facebook's apps on both tablet platforms without having to write for both of them. So, it's interesting, this sort of back and forth. And we'll have to see if next week there finally is a Facebook iPad app. Should be interesting, I think. Okay, so that's it for episode 91 of the Apple Podcast. This is Lex. Again, this is a chit-chat free podcast, and anything you can do to help it out by giving it a positive rating in iTunes, on YouTube, on Blip TV would be greatly appreciated. So thanks for listening, and see you next week.
This has been a Max Future production.